resistance was international. The resistance as our friend said in England was the empire struck back. The empire struck back. Who are our friends in? Stuart Hall? Paul Gilroy, so on and so forth. Thank you very quick.
I have a question about methodology. When you're talking about how resistance is shown, in my case, I'm looking at how it's revealed in composition and improvisation, primarily by African American musicians. That involves a semiotic analysis of the actual notes, and we know that transcriptions are flawed already, but it's still a representation that you can look at. I guess my question is, the standards of empirical evidence and the approaches to that, particularly when you're dealing with brilliant musicians who are not used to talking about the music in that way. Certainly it is there, but not everyone articulates at that way. They're not thinking on that level. Certainly the motivation is there. So I was wondering how you developed your methodologies for talking about resistance.
Yeah. I had spoken to you earlier about one of my colleagues at UCSB, Earl Stewart, who's a musician and an arranger and composer. And he's written a book in which he was required to construct a new notational system based on the same argument that you made. Said that European notational system simply did not adequately articulate blues and other black musical construction. So he had to develop a new scale. You're asking a different question. What is perhaps comparable to your dilemma in my work? And when I was listening to Tiffany's introduction, I've talked to people who said, you cannot talk about this. You know, you can't write about it, you can't imply it. All right? But there was one traditionally conservative black man who was a radical and a Marxist as well, who told this group, I will never speak to you again, and don't you try and contact me, but know that I am with you all the way. That's as much as I can tell you. So what I'm saying is that my problem is talking about and writing about radicalism when I know there are limits. That indeed, when we were organizing as undergraduate radicals at Berkeley in the 1960s, we had one rule, right? And that is, everything we did in private and public, the FBI would have access to. Just make that presumption that the police know about it. So the things you did had to have a certain kind of standard of integrity. You could be as radical as you wanted to be. But there were some of my colleagues in the movement who were not well behaved. Not well behaved. The first issue of was it Social Revolution at the Journal? first issue had an article by white women in the movement. They talked about the abuse they had suffered at the hands of their colleagues, their male colleagues. And, you know, that was a standard that we found appropriate, that it was necessary. And we would expel people for violating that standard. You don't abuse people. So getting back to the direct question that you asked, I was talking to a student yesterday about Manning Marable's treatment of Malcolm X. How many of you had a chance to look at that? Well, one of the criticisms, which is justified, is that Manning depends too much on police documents. And you have to have a critical, you have to retain a critical perspective on all your sources. All your sources. So it had to be confirmed to me that this conservative black man that I was talking to you about earlier actually existed. He was actually a radical. And I've received other kinds of confirmation of that. Both in print and at hominem and by informants. But you have to, I sort of proceed on the premise that nothing that I'm told, nothing that I see, no surface is the actuality. So within our gates is an interesting kind of example of that. I use a construction of jazz music to analyze the plot and the visuals within our gates. Look at the whole notion of improvisation, thematic materials, fractures and fragments of thematic material showing up. He has a scene at the beginning of the film which makes no sense until the end of the film, and makes no sense until you've seen the film 4 or 5 times. All right? Sylvia is portrayed as an unvirtuous woman, the heroine of the film, as an unvirtuous woman because she is found in the clutches of a white man by her fiancé. And it was only after I had seen the film at least 3 times that it came to me, that's her biological father. That's the same man who shows up later on in the film attempting to rape her, only to discover that she's his daughter when he pulls her blouse down and he sees the scar that she had, and realizes he's been trying to rape his own daughter. That's the same figure shows up in a fragment earlier in the film. When the film is proceeding as melodrama, right? Coincidence, good versus evil, etc., etc. And this little unexplained snippet is there. It's like Miles' construction of Cyndi Lauper's Time After Time. Listen to it. And the man says, I'm going to play this. Oh, no. Not right now. No. I won't play it right now. Or maybe I will. But you see these conscious manipulation of familiar materials. We all can sing Time After Time. Most of us know some of the words. Right? here's a musician who says, I'll take all of your understanding, knowledge, familiarity, and I'm going to play with it. You're going to see things there in this music that you've never seen before. You're going to hear and experience things in this song, this little ditty popular song from this little crazy woman. And you're going to suddenly see how extraordinarily powerful she could be. So, that's a method. Never be taken in by the conventions of the narrative. Yes?
Can I follow up on that, with that particular point around bunch, right? So in this text that I know, I'm sort of obsessed with these like sort of conservative looking dudes. But in that text, it's chock full. It's this memorandum about, that's supposed to be disavowing the necessity of paying attention to blackness, and we should only be paying attention to class. But it is so full of data about how white supremacy functions in the South, and particularly how it targets black people to prohibit them from exercising electoral politics.
Yeah.
Now, like, I could give two wits about electoral politics, but it's so chock full that in the middle of that, like, black people have never done anything political. There's no possibility for that to happen, for all of that repression to be happening, right?
Yeah.
So even like it's just a very common story. That's what you just said about the surface of the text. Like, never trust the rhetoric, never trust the surface of the text. There's a possibility to do more.
Yeah. Some people, we call this performing the Negro. Performing the Negro. And some people do it with extraordinary cunning. Well, most people do. Most people. You guys remember Dave Chappelle?
Mm-hmm.